She sat alone, the menu trembling in her hands, her solitude amplified by the waiter's condescending smirk. The air in the opulent dining room was thick with judgment. In less than a minute, her father, Steven Seagal, will walk through that door, and the smug atmosphere will shatter like glass. Stay with us, because the lesson this waiter is about to learn will cost him far more than just his tip. Arisa Seagal, dressed in worn jeans and a simple gray sweater, clutched the worn photograph in her pocket. She had come to La Vie en Or not to be seen, but to remember. This was her late mother's favorite spot, long before it became a temple of pretentious cuisine. The maitre d' looked down his nose at her faded Converse sneakers and seated her at the worst table in the house, a cramped two-top by the clattering kitchen doors. Then came Marco, the waiter, a man who wore his arrogance like a fine cologne. "Good evening," he began, his eyes scanning her outfit with theatrical disdain. "Just so you are aware, our tasting menu begins at $300 per person." His voice carried, and a nearby table of diners in tailored suits snickered audibly. Arissa's face burned with humiliation. She quietly ordered a sparkling water. Marco returned, popping the cork with a flourish of mock ceremony. He leaned in, his voice a low, insulting whisper. "We do have a policy against loitering. The kitchen closes soon for those not partaking in a full dining experience." It was a clear threat. Order big, or get out. Her phone lit up with a memory notification, a picture of her and her mother smiling, taken in this very restaurant years ago. A wave of grief and anger washed over her. She swallowed hard and asked for the heirloom tomato soup, the most modest item on the menu. Marco let out a long, exaggerated sigh, didn't write anything down, and sauntered away. Her reflection in the polished silverware showed a young woman fighting back tears, feeling utterly alone. She wished the ground would swallow her whole. Instead, the grand entrance door swung open. Steven Seagal entered the room, his presence instantly commanding the space. He moved with a quiet authority that silenced the ambient chatter. Forks paused halfway to mouths. The manager, a man named Rowan, materialized at his side, his posture a study in deference. "Mr. Seagal? A pleasure. Your private alcove is prepared." Marco, who had been loudly lecturing another table on the virtues of a vintage Bordeaux, abandoned them mid-sentence. His sneer was replaced by a fawning, desperate smile as he rushed toward the star. "Sir, right this way. An honor to have you." Seagal's gaze swept the room, calm and assessing. It settled on Arissa, tucked away by the kitchen. He saw her flushed face, the unshed tears in her eyes. A subtle shift occurred in his expression, a hardening almost too slight to notice. He gave her a slow, almost imperceptible nod, a silent message of acknowledgement, before following the groveling waiter. At the secluded booth, Marco made a show of presenting the wine list. Seagal didn't even look at it. He watched his daughter across the room, his focus entirely on her. "I'll wait," he said, his voice soft but firm, dismissing Marco with a subtle gesture. The waiter retreated, his professional mask slipping back into a scowl the moment he was out of Seagal's direct line of sight. Arissa stared into her cold soup, the humiliation a bitter taste in her mouth. A few minutes later, Marco reappeared at Arissa's table, his patience gone. "Finished with your water?" he sneered. "Or will you be needing the check for that?" Tears now pricked at her eyes. She asked for the complimentary bread. With a sigh of theatrical frustration, he returned and practically threw the basket on her table, showering her lap with crumbs. One hot tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. At that exact moment, Seagal stood. He moved with deliberate purpose, not towards the restrooms, but directly toward her table. He stopped, his large frame casting a shadow over her. "Arissa," he said, his voice low and rumbling with concern. "You okay, kiddo?" The single word, her name, hung in the air. Marco froze, his face draining of all color. Gasps rippled through the nearby tables. The waiter rushed over, stammering, "Sir, is there a problem? I was just seeing to the young lady." Seagal never looked at him. His eyes were locked on his daughter. "She's joining me," he stated. It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. He extended a hand to Arissa, who took it, her fingers trembling. As she stood, the entire restaurant watched in stunned silence. Marco looked as if he'd been struck. Seagal led his daughter to the plush private booth. He pulled out her chair, then turned to the petrified manager, Rowan, who had scurried over. Seagal's voice was chillingly quiet. "My daughter tells me you have a few secrets here, starting with how you treat your guests. I think I need to speak to the owner." Rowan's professional veneer cracked, revealing pure panic. Rowan began to sputter apologies, but Seagal held up a hand, silencing him. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "David, it's Steven. I'm at your La Vie en Or location. We need to talk about your manager, Rowan, and his client filtration policy." The room was dead silent. Every diner could hear the one-sided conversation. Rowan stood, pale and trembling, as his career was dismantled in less than 30 seconds. Seagal listened, then spoke again. "Yes, I'm with my daughter. She was the one he decided wasn't worthy of respect tonight." He paused. "I'll wait." He ended the call and placed the phone on the table. He looked at Rowan, whose face had crumpled in defeat. "He'll be here in 20 minutes. I suggest you have your office cleared out by then." He then turned his gaze to Marco, who looked physically ill. "You too." There was no shouting, no scene, just quiet, devastating finality. Justice was served in the suffocating silence. Seagal then ordered for his daughter, ignoring the menus, speaking softly of dishes he knew her mother used to love. He let Arissa recount the entire humiliating experience, his gaze never leaving her face, his presence a shield of absolute protection. For the next hour, they ate in their quiet corner, while the restaurant's chain of command imploded around them. There was no applause, only the hushed, fearful whispers of diners who had just witnessed a silent execution. Seagal paid the bill in cash, leaving a generous tip designated only for the busboys who had refilled his daughter's water glass without being asked. Outside, the night air was crisp. There were no cameras, no public spectacle. This was a private matter. Seagal held the door of the car for his daughter. "Dignity is your birthright, Arissa," he said softly. "Never let anyone make you pay for it." She leaned in and hugged him tightly, a wave of relief washing over her. He watched the car until its taillights disappeared into the night. Back inside, Rowan and Marco cleaned out their lockers in a state of shock, handing over their uniforms in disgrace. The owner arrived and began a complete overhaul of the restaurant's management and policies. The story of that night was never reported in the news, but it became a legend within the high-end service industry. A cautionary tale whispered among staff about the night a waiter's arrogance cost a manager his entire career. Arissa never forgot the lesson. Her own worth was not determined by the judgment of others. Weeks later, she and her father returned to the restaurant. It was different. The staff was attentive and kind to everyone. As they were seated, Seagal's eyes scanned the room, a silent guardian, making sure no one else ever had to feel the way his daughter did. He was a father first, a star second, and he would always be watching. True power doesn't announce itself. It's quiet, confident, and it defends the vulnerable. The ugliest secrets are often hidden behind the most beautiful facades, but they can be brought down by a single act of quiet courage. If this story serves as a reminder that respect is the only currency that truly matters, please like and share it. Subscribe for more stories that prove character is defined by how we treat those we think have nothing to offer. Because you never know who you're talking to. And more importantly, you never know who's watching. Be the reason someone's faith in humanity is restored, not the reason they cry into their soup.